Here's a list of our participating chapters, divisions, and universities. I would like to make a personal thank you to the Missouri chapter for sponsoring today's webcast. And so just a little update on our webcast systems change. I have been making this announcement since the beginning of the year, but just for some of those, for those of you that have just recently joined us, since the beginning of the year, all the webcasts will be listed underneath the Ohio chapter. And so, and no webcast will be listed on the website, which is the utah-apa.org/webcast website, unless it has been submitted for CM credit. It might say CM pending or CM, but once it says CM approved, it is available for the 1.5 CM credits. There's also a new rating system that we have with our webcasts, whether it be an introductory, advanced, or allied, and more information is available at this website so that you can read more about those. Our next webcast will be next Thursday on February 10th on helping to create and sustain an ethical office environment. I also want to make a couple announcements for the for recently added webcasts. Our most recent one is February 17th on planning for an aging population. On February 23rd, we'll have developing aging-friendly communities. And on March 11th, we'll have urban retail. Like I said, these were recently added, so if you are interested in these, please go to the www.utah-apa.org/webcast website and register for your webcast of choice. Also at that webcast, you'll see a complete listing for our 2011 webcast. To log your CM credits for attending today's session, please go to www.planning.org/CM, select activities by date, and then select today's date, February 4th. And there you'll be able to find healthy, active, and vibrant communities. And this is already up on the calendar, so after today's session, feel free to go there and log your credit. And then we are recording today's session, so after today, you'll be able to find a PDF and a video recording of the presentation at www.utah-apa.org/pastwebcasts.htm, and then this should be up by Monday. And I'll be going over these details at the end of the presentation as well. At this time, I'll now like to hand it over to Ada Hood, who will be introducing our speakers for today.
Thank you, Cody. Again, my name is Ada Hood. I work with the City of Ellisville as the Planning Director. I also serve as the Chapter PDO, Professional Development Officer for the APA Chapter of Missouri. So welcome to the webcast presenting Healthy, Active, and Vibrant Communities. Again, it'll be presented by Ann Mack of TrailNet. Ann is the Executive Director for TrailNet, which is a St. Louis-based nonprofit organization with a 20-year history of promoting active living, which is a way of life that encourages people to integrate physical activity into their daily routines. In today's session, you will learn how to create the framework for developing a bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure through master plans. These multifaceted plans provide the blueprint for cities to design healthy and active communities. With a focus on transportation infrastructure improvements and supporting educational and encouraging programs that promote walking and biking, these plans produce action-oriented goals and objectives to help reach a community's unique desired vision. I'm really excited about this presentation. So with that, we can begin our session, and I will pass it on to our presenter, Ann Mack. Thank you, Ann.
Well, thanks, Ada, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today talking with everyone. And at the end of my presentation, I'll introduce my coworker, Emily Lee, who will talk for a few minutes on another program. So my goal today is to make this a very productive and enjoyable hour and a half. And I'm going to do that by giving a little background and overview of our organization. I think it kind of sets the tone for where we are today. And then I will give a lot of specific...
Hey, Ann, would you be able to speak closer to the microphone, please? Because they are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Does this work better?
Can you?
It seemed like it worked a few minutes ago, so I can call in if that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, sorry. Could you just call in real fast? Because people are
Sure.
having trouble. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Cody, what number do you want me to call?
Underneath the audio tab, just switch it from use mic and speakers to telephone, and then that will give you the number to dial. Sorry, everyone.
I think if Emily mutes her speaker, it might have helped as well.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. During our test run, I thought it was going 100%. So I think that I had just completed saying that after an overview, I'm going to highlight two of the programs that are most relevant, which is our Healthy, Active, and Vibrant Community, as well as our Bike Walk Master Plan. TrailNet is an organization, as Otto said, over 20 years old. We were formed when, at the time, the mayor saw that many cities around the country were building trails to reconnect their communities to the very rivers that existed for their founding. And so TrailNet's first project was a capital project, and we served as a catalyst. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize my screen here with the control panel. And so we brought together public and private entities to create what is now a 40-mile continuous trail from the St. Louis Arch up through Illinois into the confluence of the Illinois and the Missouri rivers, Mississippi rivers. Anyway, from that project, then we took on an audacious project, which is a 1-mile bridge that was going to be dynamited into the river, and that's the old Route 66. And we've since invested about $4.5 million in its structural improvements and aesthetics so that it could be a bicycle and pedestrian corridor over the river. And after doing capital projects for about 10 years, we made the switch into what we call the 3 Ps, program, policy, and planning that promote walking and bicycling. And the reason we did that was that in our region, a parks district was created on both sides of the river that gets a 1/10 of a cent tax to create trails and greenways. And so we could see as a region we were moving forward in infrastructure, but yet we were lagging behind many places around the country and, of course, around the world in terms of policies and plans that actually promoted walking and bicycling. And so it's really been just the last 6 or 7 years that TrailNet has moved away from capital projects and more into community services. And those are the programs that I'm going to talk about today. So our mission is to lead in fostering healthy and active and vibrant communities. And I say lead in fostering because everything that we do relies heavily on partnerships. You know, even as a 20-person staff, we still couldn't possibly have the capacity, the skill sets, the expertise to do all of the things that we do without these strong partnerships. Programs are obviously the most easy to envision and foresee, and we've done programming actually for our full 20 years. It's really a great way to engage citizens, to really empower them to begin moving out and about in their community. And it's also a great way for people of all walks of life, ages, professions, to see that really today the built environment is not conducive to walking and cycling to all the destinations that really we should be able to walk and cycle to. The next P is planning. Obviously planning, I'm sure that this audience agrees, is the absolute foundation on which a healthy, active, and vibrant community can be built. Without good planning, you are not going to get a highly walkable and bikeable community. And from planning, of course, the next has to be the policies, because without policies that support smart planning, good planning, bikeable, walkable planning, it will not be a sustained vision. You might get some advances, but it's not going to be for the long term. And obviously, what we're really talking about is the link between people and places. And, you know, I always like to point out that, you know, certainly to this group it's not an epiphany, but sometimes it is an epiphany that there's actually a connection between, say, the built environment and health. And, in fact, studies show that the built environment is the biggest indicator of health. And I have to laugh because if you look back, you know, thousands of years ago, it was quite obvious that the environment was the #1 factor in how people, you know, use their tools, where they ventured out to get their food, what primitive pathways they took to get their basic needs and necessities. So, of course, when we are in a designed environment, an environment that's designed for single-passenger cars, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get an environment and people that are relying on single-passenger cars. So this slide just shows some of the research findings. There's a lot more, certainly, that I can tell you about on our resource page at the very end. But in a nutshell, when the environment, the built environment, is conducive for walking and cycling, the percentages of people using those modes for not only recreation but transportation goes way up. Another, you know, obvious part, if it's not safe to walk or safe to cycle, you get far fewer people willing to take that mode. But another very strong underlying assumption is, well, but that street's not safe for walking or biking. And people don't realize because it's not designed to be safe. There's nothing inherent about a street that would not make it safe. Now, safety also, of course, relates to physical safety and crime, so on and so forth. I'm going to touch a little bit on that later. We've all heard the obesity data, the percentages for children and adults. There are also studies that link the amount of time you stay in a car with your risk of being overweight, as well as communities that do not have any walking infrastructure and your risk of being overweight. Safe Route to School program I'll touch on again. It's really addressing that kids are spending more and more time in cars. I do want to touch briefly, of course, on the environmental implications of communities that are not safe to walk and bike in. Transportation is absolutely one of the largest contributors to air and water pollution, certainly global climate change, and that's not even to mention the land use that has to be created to support a car-based transportation, especially in an urban environment. I'm sure we've all seen the trends for obesity. Those continue to go up. So TrailNet takes a triple-pronged philosophy. This is kind of like our program, planning, and policy triangle. Any initiative has to address these three things: access and the environment, because that's obviously the form in which we move. The policy and economics part of the triangle. Obviously, if it's bad economics, then it's not going to last, but studies show that a walkable, bikeable environment is actually good for the local economy. The longer people are out of their cars, the more likely they are to stay within their local stores and retail and places to eat. And then community engagement. People are a social species, and so any kind of initiative really needs to have a social element to get people engaged and participating. In our healthy, active, and vibrant community, we also had a triple-pronged strategy. We picked communities based on certain demographics. We knew that we wanted these communities to eventually be weaned off of trail net support, and that we always wanted to provide technical assistance, whether it was on policies, say complete streets policies, or master planning, or so on and so forth. We wanted to be able to provide that as they began to build their own internal capacity. We had a non-competitive process of selecting our communities. We received funds from a local health foundation, Missouri Foundation for Health, and they actually put the parameters. The communities we selected had to have a certain risk of obesity, as well as a lower economic demographic. We also wanted to pick communities that were likely to succeed. This was a pilot. This was started 5 years ago, and so we wanted to make sure that we had some chance of success. And success, of course, was improvement in planning policy and public engagement through programming. We compiled the demographic data. We picked one urban, one suburban, and one rural community because we wanted that diversity. We did a readiness assessment to see where the community citizens were with regard to the kind of changes that we would be working on. And I can make these available to you if I'm referencing any documents at the end of the presentation. We had a kickoff event to help people see, why would my community benefit by being a healthy, active, and vibrant one. And then we drilled that down to a smaller local task force that involved elected officials, as well as, say, either city manager, public works, a parks professional, and then citizens that wanted to be involved. We felt it was important, again, because we wanted to be able to wean the communities off of our direct support, to have their own name, logo. So here's an example of Live Well Ferguson. Ferguson is a suburb just north of the urban core. And you can see that they came up with their own Live Well Ferguson. They created a brochure indicating, what their goals and objectives were, identifying the members of the community that were playing a strong role in this. And then very soon they actually started to create banners and T-shirts that they could have at some of the events in order to build public support for a livable community that meant walking, biking, and having access to the streets. Here's another branding that our urban community, Old North, called Forks and Feet Forward. That was indicating that there was a role with the farmers market, so the forks part of that, obviously. We have found that a vibrant farmers market helps in the community initiatives, and in fact, we supplied some technical assistance to our rural community that wasn't able to have a farmers market, so we worked with the county health department in order to assure them that this would be a good idea, and it was very successful. I think the first one had maybe 15 vendors, and it's become now a regular feature. So anyway, this is another example of helping a community get an identity that says healthy and active and start to build that community support for later policy suggestions that would be coming up to, say, City Council. Professional development is also a really important aspect of bringing a community on board, and we've had success with providing scholarship dollars to help take city representatives 2, in this case, Pro Walk, Pro Bike in Seattle. And interestingly enough, the 2 communities that we took both passed complete streets legislation. When they got back, as one of them said, he understood when we talked about complete streets, but by going to the conference, then he really understood how to implement it. So that was kind of what we saw the conversion was. And this is then the contingent of almost 30 that we took down to Chattanooga last September. So you can see St. Louis has really grown through a lot of people's efforts to make the statement, you know, we want to become this kind of active community. And in this contingent, there were mayors, planners, engineers, community leaders, city council members, public-private. It's a great group to take down there. Once you get these initiatives in your communities going, you want to keep the contact up, and one of the good ways is a blog, just an informal way of sharing, as you can see, humorous articles as well as best practices. We also have an annual conference that was originally just the healthy active communities coming together to share successes, share roadblocks, but we've since opened it way up. Last year we had about 250 participants, and it's a very vibrant conference. This year it'll be June 3rd. If you're interested in coming, you can get in touch with us. And one of the key elements here is engagement, breakout sessions where people have a lot of opportunity to ask questions and discuss on certain issues and topics, and also just to bring in top-notch speakers. You know, these speakers are expensive, but they really do a great job in setting the bar higher than it might already be in your area. Just an example of one of the brochures that we put together for our conference. The kind of technical assistance I earlier mentioned, that even when we're moving away from providing direct services to a community, we do want to continue offering technical assistance, whether it's, you know, helping with model language for complete streets, or, you know, looking at various other policies or ordinances. It's really important to keep that an active communication. You know, many of the communities that we work with do not have the capacity to do this on their own, or perhaps even with grant writing, so that they can get funds for some of the implementation. So here's some of the PA that we provide: researching, drafting policy, graphic design, event planning. We can help them identify appropriate speakers or experts to address whatever it is that they're trying to move forward on. We can try and help remove red tape. I mentioned grant writing, as well as connecting them to other people, whether it's locally, statewide, or across the country, so that they can share success stories and come up with good design solutions. So just in a nutshell, our Healthy Active Environment Communities, it was a 5-year initiative funded entirely by the Missouri Foundation for Health. We started as 1 full-time, and now we're up to 1.5, and we selected initially 4 communities. The program has been recognized as an emerging strategy, and so Missouri Foundation for Health has actually since received CDC funding, and will be offering, I think, 16 communities the HAVC model. So we're real excited about it being expanded through Missouri. I think one thing that I haven't said, obviously you need a champion, we all know that, but we've found that having a clear MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, so that the communities understand what their responsibilities are. You know, we have found they're very willing to obviously attend to help us with whatever capacity they already have. But if it's an MOU, I think we get a lot further and avoid miscommunication. Keys to success. There's a lot of moving parts when you're working with a few communities, and so you need a great communication system, regular meetings and minutes. Always work towards early successes because that obviously builds momentum. And I already mentioned the branding is really important. And have a strong facilitation capability in-house or work with a facilitator if you don't. We have also a couple urban planners on staff, people that are in community development, marketing, communications, but if you don't have those things in staff, you want to make sure you can identify them. So some of our successes, I mentioned the City of St. Louis. We worked with them a couple of years, passed Complete Streets legislation. One of our communities is now in their second year of a 5K, which was phenomenal. You can see by the slide, for first year, they really energized their community to get out. This is the same community that we helped them close off a few miles of streets on 4 different Sundays. We call it Sunday Parkways. It's obviously like Ciclovia. And that moved around the community, so different people were more aware of it based on where they live. And we think that really helped energize. Since then, they are now going to run those Sunday Parkways on their own. So it's another example of us building that capacity, bringing some best practices, and now this community is seeking their own funds and will contract with TrailNet to do their Sunday Parkways. Here you can see some of the kids. They had basketball shooting in the middle of the street. They had dance in the middle of the street. It was really, really great. I think this is Tai Chi, something like that. We always do kids events. Obviously it's important on a number of levels. We try and always partner helmet fitting, not only with our Safe Routes to School, but with any kind of community event. I'm sure you know most kids either don't have helmets or they have inadequate helmets. And I would imagine most of you have access to a hospital or a health organization that would provide those either free of charge or for very low cost. I think we paid up to, say, $6 per helmet. This is the farmers market I mentioned. Initially was not going to be allowed in Franklin County, and we saw that this would be a great community asset, and so help them work with the health department. It's a key thing for walking and cycling. I'm going to move through a couple of these so I can get to the master planning. Old North was our urban community that we worked with, and in this case they were already doing a new streetscape, and we helped convince them to widen the sidewalks and have since had a closed street festival in this area. You can see a few of the renderings. Renderings are one of the most powerful tools that you can possibly use, and I encourage you to write costs for renderings into any, say, grant proposal or budget. They are very expensive, but they do a great job in helping community people, elected officials, see what could be. It's too often that we look at our streets, look at our surrounding our schools, intersections, sidewalks, and assume that this is how they'll always be. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Barriers of implementation, obviously lack of community consensus certainly is not an impossible barrier, but it will slow you down. It's very important to get people's fears and concerns out as soon as possible, and at the same time to not let that dominate every future meeting. What we have found a lot of success with is when we have a public meeting and there are perhaps issues that have been dealt with and yet they continue to come up. We have small work groups. so that not all the work groups are being dominated by individuals that might not be keeping up with accurate information. Again, key lessons learned from our Healthy Active, that you need a group decision on what's going to be the highest priority that you're going to take on. You need professional development and technical assistance in order for there to be the skill sets in those particular areas. Early successes are key, as well as getting those early successes out into the community. TrailNet often helps with media releases, press releases, photo opportunities, not only through our website and our e-communications, but also through the print media and radio. This is really essential to build on the sense of success and to continue the momentum. We like to acknowledge our local champions. We have an annual award event in which we give awards and acknowledge the hard work that these community people have invested in helping transform their community. And we also try and, get some of these basic planning principles out there, so it's not just mystery. It's not like something that comes from another planet, but these are actually good, sound planning principles that help communities design to be more walkable and bikeable. We're going to transition now into the master planning service that TrailNet provides. And this is a good time for me to say that TrailNet's approach is always a systemic approach. Just like the three-pronged elements, every community is at a different readiness level. And so some might want a master plan first, and we can complete that master plan and then come in with the healthy and active. Some might want to go more for the healthy and active and then be ready for a master plan. So we're flexible, however the conversation can start. Back in 2005, our region, our MPO, East-West Gateway, created what you see here on the screen is the St. Louis Regional Bicycle and Walking Transportation Plan. It's really more of a toolkit, and it came as a result of, in the late 90s, there was generated a bike, almost like a suitability, a document in which there were actually lines on a map. And there was a lot of resistance. To, is that in my front yard, so on and so forth. So this plan instead looked at environments, the types of environments that a street might have, and said these are the appropriate walking and biking facilities for that type of environment. And it was much better well received. And yet I still felt it might end up on a shelf unless every single community, and we have over 100 municipalities making up our region, understood how to implement this. So TrailNet wrote a grant for Transportation Enhancement Funds and got three-year contracts for doing master plans in communities. That's an 80-20 match, so that means that the federal government paid 80% and the communities only paid 20%. And we this year will be wrapping up our 20th community. So the idea was that this toolkit is accessible to the municipalities for facilities, but our Bike Walk Master Plan can actually help them get the federal funds to build these facilities out. I'm just going to run through one example. This is in Chesterfield, Missouri, and you can actually see their complete plan on their website. For those of you then who want to see what one of our master plans, go to Chesterfield, Missouri's homepage, and you will see links to get to this document. Basically, our process was to go into a contract with the community and get all the studies and traffic information, so on and so forth, that the community currently had. And after that, then, of course, we would dive into public participation. We would bring maps to the community and ask what destinations would people like to walk and or bike to? Because again, it's a community plan. You want it to be community driven, and some of the naturals, of course, are the schools, the library, the civic center, the rec center, so on and so forth. But each community then has its own assets. Some already have, say, a trail system, and so it's really important for them to be able to walk or bike to a trail system and not have to rely on jumping in their car and driving there. Anyway, with this citizen input, then we develop our goals and objectives with following recommendations for various pedestrian and bicycling facilities. The two primary goals in the development are, one, that the bike ped facilities are a functional element in the city's transportation and recreation system. I mean, we don't want it to be an add-on. We don't want it to be a completely separate consideration. So it has to be an integrated approach. And then the safety element has to be part and parcel of starting to increase people that are using their bicycles and walking places. Now I have just a series of slides. Again, this is Chesterfield with some of their basic pedestrian improvements, closing significant gaps in the pedestrian network. That's always huge at our public input meetings. People know where they want to walk and they know why they can't get there. Cul-de-sacs are obviously a key concern out in our suburbs. Improve pedestrian conditions within half-mile of K-12 schools. We hope in most cases we'll get a safe route to school program in these communities. We do not have one currently, but that's an ideal situation so that you have the parents and the administrators very aware of some of the roadblocks to getting elementary kids to and from their school. Improve pedestrian accessibility in and around commercial centers and destinations. That is one of the preferred destinations that often comes up is, there a grocery or a restaurant or a community gathering place that people want to be able to get to, and oftentimes they can see it. They can see it from their house, but they can't actually walk there. And then obviously enhance pedestrian conditions at intersections along major arterial roads. I don't think I'm telling anyone anything new here, but marked crosswalks, pedestrian signals where someone can actually reach them at all times, islands on arterial medians. We are not ADA specialists here, but obviously we incorporate ADA into our recommendations. This is just an example of the pedestrian map. And then we do the same thing with cyclists. We look at off-road as well as on-road. I'm just going to move through these. You can see all these on the website. This is just reiterating, that it's some of the preferred destinations already. Looking at density, looking at connectivity. It's interesting too because some of our plans will be multi-city. We've done up to 4 at a time, which of course makes sense since the boundaries of a city aren't the boundaries of where people want to walk and bike to. But even if it is just a singular municipality, they're aware of the surrounding assets that they want to, walk and bike to, and that always comes up in our plan. All right, so funding, that's always the key. It's very difficult, obviously, to come to. Again, we worked with our MPO since the federal guidelines are to have bike facilities in any request for federal funds. Our MPO is happy that now we have plans that can enable communities to actually know how to design and build those. There used to be a lot of bait and switch where a community would indicate that they would have, say, bicycle facilities, and then when the funds came through, there would be some reason or another why those couldn't be built, whether it was public pressure or some other, theoretically restricting element. But we're hoping that that is not going to be the case anymore. We have helped one of our communities receive about $300,000 in funds from Missouri Foundation for Health to continue the work. So part of the role we see again as catalysts is helping people get funds to continue these efforts. At this point, I'm going to introduce Emily Luton on our staff, who heads up our Travel Green program. And after Emily's finished, then we will be open for questions.
So the Travel Green program is something that we do with communities once, they've implemented their bike walk master plans, they've done their healthy, active, and fiber communities, and they're ready to start being encouraged to bike for short trips, to bike to work, to bike for transportation. So this is the 5-mile or less type trips. So we work with different businesses and different communities in St. Louis in order to give them the tools to make biking as transportation the easy choice. So some things that we do for employees are worksite assessments and recommendations, an employee survey to see the needs of the employees, and from that we can create educational sessions where we always, with everything we provide an incentive. So at the educational sessions, we'll have free lunch so that employees will always want to go. Once again, we're making this the easy choice, so who wants to turn down a free lunch? And then we have events and networking that will help to connect the employees, because support is a major aspect of biking. In order to have the confidence, if you're just not completely ready, if you're on your way there, biking with a coworker, having a bike pool similar to a carpool to work is a great way to get going. And we also offer incentives that range from T-shirts, helmet raffles, to commuter bike packages at local bike shops that are customized completely for the bike commuter at an affordable cost. Some successes we've had is we did our Travel Green program with Barnes-Jewish, which is a major hospital, has 14 different hospitals in the St. Louis area, or Missouri area actually. And we worked with their health literacy team to help get their employees to bike to work. So in this picture is employees from their children's hospital at one of our Bike to Work Day stations, and we offered them free breakfast and coffee. And it was also a great chance for the employees to connect with one another, because a lot of the employees didn't even know that there were other employees in the office that bike to work. So they were able to be these office champions, similar to our task force in our healthy and active and vibrant communities, because they were able to lead up the program in their own office as they know their office better. So it was great to have that connection in order to improve the program. In our National Bike to Work Day, we had a lot of successes. TrailNet, we're about to embark on our 11th year of promoting Bike to Work Day in the St. Louis area. And we offer free breakfast and coffee. It's a very easy thing to do if you work with a local, coffee shop or pastry bagel place, and they donate everything. And it's just a very fun event. It's a great way to support for biking in the community and to connect bikers from all around. And it's also a great thing to get biking in the media. It was proclaimed National Bike to Work Day in St. Louis on behalf of the mayor. So it's just a great event and a great way to get businesses involved in the biking community. And the Safe Routes to School program is another thing that TrailNet does. It works to get kids to walk to school. Back in the day, walking to school was the norm, but today with the way streets are planned, with safety, with all the different issues, walking to school is no longer the norm. So TrailNet creates walking school buses, and similar to our Healthy, Active, and Vibrant Community program, they find a parent, a local champion at the school, who will help to lead up this program. So we are able to expand the program and sustain it in the school and reach as many schools as possible. So this is a great program to get children mobilized and walking to school. And here are some resources that explain our toolkit, which is a great, gives you opportunities to implement TrailNet practices in all different areas, whether it's a work site, whether it's a community, whether it's a religious facility, any institution. TrailNet has given you the tools and resources to a certain extent of how you can implement this. And also at the Centro TRT website, there's some information about TrailNet's obesity prevention and healthy, active, and vibrant community initiatives. Now we'll open for questions. Okay,
Before questions, I do want to correct that it's actually Mack@trailnet.org and not Ann@trailnet.org. And also to say that our toolkit is available on our website, I think Emily mentioned, and that we're going to have a new website within a couple of weeks, so it'll be easier to access. But you can get that toolkit on our website. So Emily is going to let us know the questions, and hopefully I can address as many of them as possible.
Great. Okay, Ann, do you have any facts or are you aware of any research regarding the effectiveness of bike lanes on the road versus a multi-use path, and which approach results in shifting car trips to bike trips?
Well, was the word effective?
Yes.
It depends what your end goal is. So, the challenge with off-road trails is that, it's more difficult to have land to build them on to all the destinations you want to go. So obviously, the ideal is to have every road accessible to bicycles and have off-road built wherever possible. Greenways are one of the best community assets that you can create, but not every community has either the land available or the funds currently to build it. I've commuted for over 30 years. I'm not commuting while it's -5, but I commute virtually every. I go about 24 miles round trip, and I love it when I can jump on a trail, but I'm generally on road.
Are you seeing an increasing trend in communities that have implemented these healthy living strategies? For example, allowing backyard chickens and raising honeybees or other healthy homegrown food alternatives?
There's definitely a trend up in, certainly the locavore movement is supporting local. We're finding that, again, as I mentioned, the more you can walk and bike in a community, the more the local money stays in the local economy. And you can find statistics on this, but it also develops a sense of pride. Small businesses stand a better chance of succeeding if they have a local constituent. And also, you can't underestimate the cost savings to not having to build as much car infrastructure as bicycle infrastructure. We just met last week with a university that is really struggling because they're maxed out on how much land they can now utilize to build new buildings, new research facilities, so on and so forth. So all their parking is now going to have to be underground at a cost of $45,000 per parking space. So if you really look at that, $45,000 per space, you can start to get very creative. You can get more community cars or car sharing. You could actually get people to take a taxi home when a carpool didn't work out and still not spend, that kind of money. So anyway, yeah.
And what role does the State Department of Transportation play in these processes?
Well, they played an enormous role for receiving the Transportation Enhancement Fund. They also, previous to that, were our sponsor for CMAQ funds, which is Congestion, Mitigation, and Air Quality Federal Funds. So our DOT has been supportive of us utilizing those funds for bicycle and pedestrian. There are regional directors, as there are in every state. Therefore, some regions of Missouri are more open and are incorporating these designs than others. And certainly at a statewide level, I would not consider us to be progressive. I do want to say, though, one of the examples that having a large membership has helped with, there was a bridge that was being built over one of our large interstates. It's one of the rings that encircles St. Louis, 270. And we caught wind that there would be no sidewalk or bike lanes on this bridge. Now, since most of our staff are actually cyclists, we knew that this is a major east-west corridor. So we let our demographics know. We have about 12,000 email subscribers, and very articulate, but a lot of emails went, and so DOT regionally changed the design, which was really our first big success. So there are today a sidewalk that goes across it as well as bike lanes. But devil's in the details. When we actually went to the ribbon cutting, which was great that we got to be a part of it because of this bike ped, the contractors had put the storm grates in the wrong direction. So, that's why you have to kind of pay attention to the smallest detail, because you might have a great plan, you might have citizen buy-in, you might have the public entity buy-in, but yet how it's actually built, as you know, makes an enormous difference in whether it's a successful facility or not.
Before I ask the next question, I just want to remind people, feel free to send in questions that we'll ask Ann. And so the next question is, what is a realistic time frame for working with the community in order to make a healthy, active, vibrant community?
Oh, that's a great question. And again, it has to do with what you're measuring. If you're measuring body mass index, I can't even begin to guess. That's a very long time frame. If you're instead measuring community engagement, you should be able to see community engagement in less than a year. If you want to actually see programs and events, that'd be a year and a half. As I mentioned, the Complete Streets policy, we've been working with these communities for, more like 2 or 3 years. So depending on their readiness and depending on what outcome you're measuring, that time frame differs. And that's, again, why we urge you to have early successes. You're going to develop a relationship with the city leaders. You're going to develop a relationship with the major champions. So have them help you determine what some of those early successes might be. Maybe if it's even revitalizing something they already have. Again, take a farmer's market. And for those of you who are wondering why farmers markets keep coming up, it's not just because of this movement to local. It is an example of a community asset that is inherently best if walkable and bikeable. The feel of going to a vibrant farmer's market is often not only the excitement between you or vendor, but it's the tangential. It's around the periphery of a farmer's market that you're getting the side conversations, you're getting the kids, interacting, you're getting other people wanting to be a part of that energy. And that really is one of the signs of a vibrant community. And in fact, we added the word vibrant. Initially, we wrote the grant proposal to Missouri Foundation for Health for their childhood obesity funding stream, because we wanted to target childhood obesity. So it started as healthy and active. But when we started seeing that a lot of these indicators have a vibrancy, and that is due to public engagement, people actually wanting to be a part of some social element. And I'm not sure I showed this statistic, but your chances of becoming overweight and obese go way up if the social network you're in is overweight and obese. So the same is true for the opposite. If the network that you are in is a healthy one that's committed and participating in healthy, active lifestyles, healthy eating, then it's much more likely that you will also be engaged in those activities and not overweight and obese.
Ann, how knowledgeable are you on the trend for communities to adopt requirements for new development to provide bike racks? New retail, office, and workplace industrial adult multifamily housing. And what role does Telnet play in this process?
Well, those decisions are made on a municipal by municipal basis, rather than on a statewide, so on and so forth. So those are definitely, policies that we encourage. After a complete streets policy is passed, there's a whole list of other policies that hopefully are of interest to the community. And working with developers is key. I can't say that we've had a lot of experience here. It seems to be a bit of a harder nut to crack, especially when the development community is at a slow pace right now. But the bicycle amenities are key to that safe infrastructure. It's not just a bike lane or bike signage, but those amenities. St. Louis, we're proud to say, is getting a bike commuter station, which is actually under construction. It's going to be in the heart of our downtown, and it is being built and run, at least for the first 2 years, because our city got Department of Energy funds. And so DOE is providing a couple $100,000, and it will house 120 bikes. There'll be 2 showers for males, 2 showers for females. As a member, we are handling the membership. It'll be anywhere from $120, $130 a year, very inexpensive, and that will provide you with a key fob, which will give you 24-hour access to your bike, so you can ride in, store your bike safely, take a shower, head to work. Right outside the commuter station is what is called a WeCar, W-E-C-A-R, and that is a hybrid that you rent by the hour just by logging on and saying what hours you need it. So even if you needed a car during the day, you have the WeCar, you return the WeCar, return from work, get on your bike, change, and go home. And we're terrifically excited. We think that's going to be opening sometime end of March. And right next door, we're having a bike shop open. So even better, you'll be able to drop your bike off if it needs any tune-ups or repairs. And then at the end of the day, you can pick it up and repeat that. So TrailNet, we are moving our offices to the 2nd floor of that building to be part of the Synergy late spring.
And one of the viewers noticed several large curb bump outs along the Old North streetscape. And a lot of the planners have found that it's a hindrance to bikers since they need to swerve into the traffic lane. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, that's a good observation. For those of you who are not familiar with that section, it's the 14th Street Mall up in Old North. That's only a couple of blocks long, and it is to be highly pedestrianized. So bicycle traffic, if you're looking for a cut-through or speed, would use a block that was on either side of that mall.
Okay, and what role did TrailNet play in the City of St. Louis' package of complete streets?
As I mentioned, provided 2 scholarships to staff within the city planning department and took them to Seattle for Pro Walk, Pro Bike, and that was obviously the one prior to Chattanooga. And in that way, the staff members of the city could actually sit in the sessions. They spent a lot of time talking to people in similar positions in government around the country, and it really enabled them to see the process. So the role TrailNet played after we came back, so first was the scholarship and obviously building the relationships that prioritized that they could go on this trip. Then we worked with them, showing them examples of other policies from around the country, and talked with, we have aldermen in the city of St. Louis, so then we developed those relationships, starting, of course, also with the champions, those people who already were supportive of bicycling and understood that that was a benefit. So that's what I call kind of the technical assistance, helping with language, being a support, and networking the staff and the older people to others that could help them in their positions.
Okay, and then from that, how responsive has the government been to actually incorporating and implementing these regulations into their zoning and land use codes?
Well, that's a slow process, as I'm sure you all know, and we have just started a tracking system in-house for both Healthy Active and the Bike Walk Master Planning, where we are surveying officials to know where they are on these various steps, as well as internally decide what technical assistance we can provide to best move them up the ladder. And so I don't have something that I can quickly say what that is, but we will be getting that information out if you sign up for our email subscription. You know, we have been asked to help with further policies from some of the municipalities.
Okay. Do you have any advice on getting bicycle bridges constructed, and St. Louis experienced any issues with this?
I'm not sure you mean bicycle bridges well, we don't, the public entity, our New Park District, has incorporated some funds for bicycle bridges alone, but I think the person probably means bicycle facilities on bridges is what I'm thinking. And that, again, is working with individual municipalities. I know the city of St. Louis really made a concerted effort because a number of the bridges, particularly the north-south bridges, were being improved. And so we have better access on the bridges. Again, that's just a matter of working with the municipalities before the plans are too far down the road to provide, what those facilities need to look like.
Okay. How is TrailNet monitoring for effectiveness? Are you looking at greenhouse gas reduction or anything? Are you quantifying anything for effectiveness?
Our Travel Green program will be quantifying. That was what Emily talked about. What we want to do is when we have a relationship with a business or community, we need to have the residents or employees monitor how many times they are avoiding driving their car. So, anytime they are multimodal, they'll be capturing the mileage that was eliminated. And then what TrailNet will do is we'll try and quantify that into what the carbon reduction, what is the result of that carbon reduction, say on a biannual or annual basis. And that, of course, is tied directly into the incentives that we would work with the employer in terms of, obviously shower facilities, safe places to keep your bike, a flexible work schedule, flexible dress, possibly, financial incentives if it means their employee doesn't require a parking space, so on and so forth. But yes, we're going to be moving in and hope to have some software by the end of the year that can help us quantify that.
Okay. And it worked for St. Louis's downtown bicycle station. What was the role that TrailNet played with the city, and how can other cities advocate for such a facility in their own city?
Well, again, I think that developing relationships, city leaders is absolutely key. And, when you set these meetings, you need to be prepared to address the economic development aspect. That's going to be the #1 question. Why should we put limited resources towards a facility which could seem to be addressing a very small percentage of the population? And, that's true. If you were to look at just the raw numbers of how many people, like myself, ride their bikes to work, it's not going to be that impressive to someone who doesn't understand that, first of all, if a community isn't designed for cycling, that number will always stay low. And if the design improves, that number will always go up. And so, anyway, and then also bring the economic numbers of, if you start to design a bike and walking infrastructure, then there's a biking walking culture that can follow, and again, it's this vibrancy. And I'm going to give you some resources, that you need to tap into. First of all, the association, APDP, of pedestrian and bicycling professionals, and is an absolutely top-notch organization. It's fantastic. I highly recommend you joining if you aren't a member. APDP. Anyway, they will give you phenomenal information, great resources. They have fabulous trainings. They have complete streets training, and I think that's going to answer a lot of your questions.
And I know your Safe Routes to School program is a national program. Has that locally led to any planning and infrastructure changes?
Yes, actually, well, our program isn't a national program. I think what you meant is that it's actually an international program. We brought it to St. Louis in 2006. But what we are doing with Safe Routes to School is encouraging our schools to apply for either the infrastructure or non-infrastructure funds. I think, as you well know, or maybe not, each state allocates a certain dollar amount for infrastructure, sidewalks, crosswalks, so on and so forth. So with our schools, we try and bring in an engineer, and that engineer then can give some basic recommendations for the school to then write a grant proposal to seek those funds. So again, the role TrailNet plays is not to receive those funds per se, but to encourage and help with that grant writing. So I don't know of anything that's been built because of the turnaround. I know we were trying to get a two-way street turned into a one-way street, which was not going to obviously cost a lot, but there was some neighborhood resistance. But if you are not aware of the Safe Route School infrastructure funds, contact your state DOT and inquire about those.
Do you experience issues of people not wanting to wear helmets, and what's TrailNet's stance on this as an organization?
We aren't an enforcement agency, so we can't enforce, but we certainly strongly advise people to wear helmets. You know, it is absolutely essential for safety, and certainly our helmet fitting for elementary schools, you know, puts that message out there. We do not let kids participate if they don't have a helmet on. At our Safe Routes School, we do bike rodeos, which is at the end of the day on the, usually they have like a playground blacktop area where we work with a local bike shop, and the bike shop does free maintenance, make sure the brakes work, you know, the steering wheel is on tightly, and then we do the helmet fitting. So some of the municipalities do have helmet ordinances, and therefore if we have a ride, we require the helmet for that particular ride.
Okay. And I know you mentioned the APBP organizations. Do you have any other professional organizations that you'd like to discuss, or other conferences that would be great for urban planners and similar organizations like TrailNet to attend?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. We have 2 staff people currently presenting at Smart Growth in Charlotte. We've been to the International Livable Cities Conference, which we garnered considerable data, you know, a lot of really strong data supporting the economic benefits to walkable and bikeable communities. The National Center for Biking and Walking, NCBW, has put out a tremendously beneficial newsletter. It gives you a lot of what's happening around the country and world that really, again, helps you see what's possible, and always has a contact so that you can do some direct networking to get that information. You're certainly welcome to come to our convening in June. I think what I would say is once you hook into those few, you know, there's going to be another, I mean, there's the Complete Streets. You can be a part of the Complete Streets endeavor, which I would highly recommend. I think that's one of the most powerful. And for those of you who don't know the terminology Complete Streets, years and years ago you may have heard something called routine accommodations. Well, you know, that sounds attractive, and it you know, wasn't really a compelling way to begin talking about biking and walking facilities. So the idea behind Complete Streets is a street is not complete unless it is first and foremost designed for the most vulnerable, which is your pedestrian, and then the next most vulnerable would be bicycles and other wheeled things, and then your mass transit rider, and then last your single passenger car. So it kind of turns upside down probably a few decades worth of street design.
Did TrailNet play any role in getting St. Louis public transit to incorporate multimodal bike racks and bike hooks, things of that sort?
Yes, one of our employees unfortunately passed away quite young, but he had discussions with Metro, which is the agency that runs those. You know, I personally was hoping for the hook system that, say, Portland has, because I believe more and more bicycles will be needing to be accommodated on the Metrolink trains, and as it is, it's kind of a substandard way of just throwing your bike in the back and hoping you're not in anyone's way. So we'll see where that goes. We try and keep in, we have a good relationship with Metro. We try and keep in contact with them so that one, bikes don't become banned, and two, if there's any option of retrofitting cars to have this kind of hook or system would be great.
Is St. Louis part of the National Association of City Transportation Officials? If not, they intend to join?
You know, we had this discussion in Chattanooga, and I'm afraid to say that I don't know the answer to it, but I can find that out, and if you email me, I can let you know.
Speaking of bikes being banned, you know, there's been things in the news about different areas in St. Louis that have intended or wanted to ban bikes. What is Pedestrian stance on this, and what can other cities do if they come up with a problem that cities may want to ban bikes?
Right. There was actually a county, it's called St. Charles County. It's west of here, northwest of here, and they had indicated they were going to go towards a bicycle ban. Well, you know, I've been down this road with municipalities and others before. I mean, I knew they couldn't really successfully ban bicycles. Our DOT immediately responded saying that, you know, that could not happen. So if they would have tried, of course, that would have ended up in the courts and so on and so forth. But instead, what I recommend is beginning a conversation as soon as possible with the city council members, as many of them as will sit down with you, and you can really talk about your perspective on the benefits of having cyclists on the road, and then address what the problem areas are. And in that case, my strong stance was, and still is, that it wasn't a bicycle problem issue, it's a speed issue. The roads in question were probably dirt paths, then dirt roads, then gravel roads, and now paved roads. They aren't engineered roads. And they really should not have the speed limit that's currently posted, and certainly people are driving beyond those speed limits. So again, I think that early engagement, getting the real concerns out on the table, clearing up any misinformation or, you know, in this case, the issue that didn't want to be talked about, which was speed, as it is that ban did not hold. It was never voted in.
Okay. If you could think of one thing that St. Louis could do to become a more bike-friendly city, what would it be to have the trail and help in this effort?
Well, I'm assuming that you mean the larger region. I think the city of St. Louis is to be applauded. I think that it's doing a lot. It certainly is doing more than the county. And so I would say as a region, the more complete street policies that can be passed, that would be my #1 recommendation. You know, we are made up of a lot of municipalities, and the more municipalities that have made the statement through complete streets or otherwise, we want to be bikeable and walkable, then the non-municipal roads will feel the pressure to follow. So if you're a municipality and you're doing a great job with your roads, yet here comes a county road or here comes a state road, and it has no design elements that are bikeable and walkable, you can see how that will really destroy the integrity of what the people's vision for their community is. So 2 communities making that statement can be powerful, but 20 communities making that statement to the other jurisdictions is going to be paid attention to. So again, my #1 recommendation would be the passage of the policy, which by the very nature requires champions within the community, and therefore the communities realize that their role collectively is to talk to the county, the counties, and the state so that those roads will enhance their vision of bikeable, walkable instead of intruding.
As we know, St. Louis is its own unique city. Is there a city that St. Louis looks towards for inspiration for its bike walk planning?
Well, would that be where I look forward, or where the city looks forward?
For you and TrailNet, as vision looks forward.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, having, you know, recently been to Portland, quite frankly, St. Paul, Minneapolis, in my mind, is phenomenal. I mean, I would hold that against any location. I'm sure all the people who aren't from there are now wondering. But, you know, Madison, I've had, you know, a great time in that. Santa Barbara, also quite good. There's a lot of communities that I think are doing fantastic, and the reason is because there's amazing individuals and organizations around the country. I mean, if you're a planner listening to this and you haven't dug into this network, you will be impressed. A lot of people doing good work, and my biggest concern, I think all of our concern, is where the federal transportation bill is going. We do hear rumblings quite loudly that pulling bike walk elements, pulling transit elements, pulling high-speed rail elements is a very likely scenario. And of course, without federal funds, there are no funds.
Okay. Automobile drivers through fees, licensing, and other taxes generate funds that are used for roads. Should other users of complete streets, such as bicyclists, provide their fair share? And if yes, how?
Well, actually, bicyclists do provide their fair share because most of the streets are built with property taxes, not, gasoline taxes. I mean, those are mostly interstates where bicyclists do not. So that's one of those pieces of misinformation that, we've tried to address. Unless you don't own any property, you do pay the same taxes as vehicles. And also, cyclists use a lot less. First of all, they damage the roadways far, far less, and they use a less infrastructure. So with regard to, parking lots, gas stations, that's a lot of infrastructure to support a car.
Okay. If a city doesn't have an organization such as TrailNet that advocates for bike walk facilities, how do you suggest the city going about applying for these types of grants and putting this agenda on the table to their planners and to their city and their state Department of Transportation to get these things accomplished?
What was the very first sentence?
If they don't have an organization such as TrailNet,
okay.
an advocacy organization.
Okay. Let's see. Obviously, you can start within a single community, almost of any size, and just begin to build a consensus for that community wanting to be bikeable and walkable. Trying to earmark some funds to hire a planning company, of which, again, through APDP, you will get quite a few bike walk professional planners that are available. And just kind of doing an internal process, and that document, that plan, can then be integrated into any capital request. So obviously, every community is going to have a schedule of when their roads will be either repaved or, changed. Not many communities, I think, are building new roads, and in that process, you will be seeking the federal funds. The irony about bikeable, walkable facilities is it's a negligible portion of a road project. I mean, you can imagine, projects that are millions and millions of dollars, the elements that are dedicated to the biking and walking parts are quite small. But if it's an add-on, if you're only seeking funds, it's easy for someone to counter, well, we don't have funds for that improvement. So again, that's why I would say that start with what exists in terms of planning, in terms of, a 10-year plan for road changes, even if it's striping. I mean, one of the things that we just right out of the box promote is if it's a speed limit of 35 or under, and you have, say, 2 lanes in each direction, you can make the inner lane narrower, say by a foot. Obviously you have to stay within the, national codes, and then the outer would be a foot wider. So that is, it's not a bike lane, doesn't need a bike lane, but it gives the biker a little bit more breathing room. So these are some of the low-hanging fruit that you could do by looking at the plan, getting a group of professionals together that can start integrating bike ped elements into that plan.
Okay. Do you foresee St. Louis having a bike share program, the ones that are popping up all over the country, all over the world, within the next 5 years?
Let's see, 5 years. We have obviously talked about it. Different people have brought this up. I think yes. That's my guess. I think the yes is because, you know, we're on a roll. We got bronze status from the League of American Cyclists. For those of you who aren't familiar, you can go to their website, and they have a rating system, platinum down through bronze, of, you know, how you can qualify. So the city has gotten that. Past complete streets, a lot of support from the aldermen. Commuter station opens up this spring. Yes, I think for bike sharing in 5 years.
Okay, great. And once again, a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to send them to us. And how is Talent funded?
We have a huge diversity of funding. We have a budget of about $1.8 million, and most of that comes currently from foundation funds. Missouri Foundation for Health, as I mentioned, has been a strong supporter because of our work in policy. We also are a membership organization, so we bring in some through our membership. We are a 501c3 status organization. We have some corporate underwriting. I'm sure, as you know, the healthy and active movement is gaining a lot of popularity because the prevalence of obesity and obesity-related diseases. So even though this is not a great economy, the corporate marketing folks can see that this partnership would be good for them to be involved in. We have the government funding that I mentioned for our Bike Walk Master Plan. We're wrapping that up, though, this year. And I think that's oh, and we do have fee-for-service. We actually have a recreational program. We have about 20 Sunday rides a year, as well as hundreds and hundreds of other rides. And we average about 10,000 riders a year, and that is a fee-for-service, so we can support our staff in producing those rides.
Universities are a great asset to have. Does TrailNet partner with any local universities for things like evaluation or dissemination, things like that?
Yes, we've had a lot of strong evaluation with universities. University of North Carolina has evaluated our healthy, active, and vibrant communities, which was where we awarded the emerging, first it was a promising strategy, and now we're bumped up to emerging. Our staff isn't faculty at St. Louis University, so we are continually have interns in the office. At any one time, we could have at least 2 interns. We similarly get interns from Washington University, and in fact, recently met with them with regard to trying to decrease the vehicles that are actually parked on campus. So I could not agree more. We have a very strong relationship with the public health. I think that something else I would strongly recommend, well, first I'll just share an anecdote, and then I'll have a recommendation, is one of the conferences, I think it was the International Livable Cities Conference in Santa Fe. There was a presentation by a professor from Australia, and one of the most exciting courses I heard about was half her students were pre-med, and the other half were architecture. And it was just amazing, the stories that came out of these 2 seemingly different professions with regard to the built environment's influence on health. And so if you look at our, cities and counties and how we similarly silo, I mean, the Department of Health never talks to the Department of Highways and Traffic. I mean, it's as if they live in completely different universes. So one of TrailNet's strong roles through our conferences, through the scholarships that we took people to the Pro Walk, Pro Bike, is to get these professions talking. And so that when it's time to design something or it's time to solve a problem, that you already have that relationship built in, that they can safely start to, see the other person's side.
And you talked a bit about the Ciclovia program and the open streets and the Sunday parkways. Could you elaborate a bit more on what those programs are and maybe how a city can advocate for that?
Right. I would say, again, I know I keep saying this, but we call them here open streets or Sunday parkways. That is one of the best marketing programs you can ever do early on in working with the community. And the reason is, well, first of all, what it is it's literally closing streets to vehicle traffic. You need to close the streets so that people feel safe walking, biking, And then they'll come up with their own activities. Like I said, we had dance, we had you name it, and people were self-organizing in order to have fun in the streets. So you need to get an audience with the leaders in the communities to describe what cyclovia means. And you can go on the website, you can go on our website and probably link to something. You want to pick a low traffic day. That's why Sundays generally are perfect. You want to pick a route that will highlight some of the things that you want to highlight in a community. Maybe it's a neighborhood that's being revitalized. Maybe it's a local market that's just opened. Maybe it's, you know, a place where they can get food and beverage. And then you have to involve obviously the police, because the police are going to play a role in keeping these streets closed. And then it basically builds its own momentum. You know, you make sure that organizations know that they can take part. You saw the tents that I had in my slide where we did helmet fittings, and we have a bike blender where it literally, you can get kids on it and they ride it, and there's a little blender on the back, and they can make a smoothie and then have the smoothie, and it's just kind of a fun way to engage people. So anyway, so Sunday parkways are where you close the roads for a certain amount of time. I think the open streets was from 10 to 1, 8 to 1, oh right, 8 to 1, and I guess the Sunday parkways were later in the day. Now I must say that in the Sunday parkways, when we closed neighborhoods, obviously you could only limit some coming and going. Other times people had to leave, but they had to have a bicycle escort. So if someone lived on a street that was closed during those 4 hours, they would notify someone. A bicycle escort would ride in front of the car to the barricades, where then they would be outside of the closed street.
And what is a bicycle boulevard, and how could you advocate for that in your city?
A bicycle boulevard is a street that has low traffic, and is what I like to say is its intent is to carry mostly bicycles with the occasional car. And it is so it's designed for bicycles, but you can take any street that's low traffic, but you can put traffic calming so that the cars have a tendency to go slower. For example, the more trees, the more shade on a street, the slower the cars will go. Obviously, planters, medians, all these things will slow a car down. And the beauty of bicycle boulevards is that they help cyclists get from place A to B more quickly, and they know that there's not going to be car traffic. We're actually hoping that the street that goes past our commuter station will become a bicycle boulevard, because it's what all of us use anyway. So it's kind of a mixture of it being designated a boulevard because it already has low traffic, low speed, and also increasing the traffic calming elements of that street to keep within that intent that it's for bicycles. But it does not ban cars.
Great. Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, this is Cody. I just want to thank you both, Emily and Ann, for giving today's presentation. And for those of you still in attendance, I just want to go over a few quick details on how to log CM credits for attending today's session. So what you'll want to do is just go to www.planning.org/CM, select activities by date, and then select today's date, February 4th, and then it will be underneath Healthy, Active, and Vibrant Communities. And like I said, this is already up, so once you log out of here, you can go and claim those credits. And then, like I said before, we are recording today's session, so you'll be able to find a PDF and a video recording of today's webinar at www.utah-apa.org/pastwebcasts.htm, and then this should be up over the weekend. So I just want to remind you of those, and I thank you again.